A month before her marriage to Jiang Wan-yi, she wanted to give birth to another man. When Zhou Ziyuan disagreed, she brought up the matter day after date. Until half a month before the wedding, Zhou Ziyuan found her pregnancy test list. Only then did he realize that she had already been pregnant for nearly a month. It turned out that she had never thought of obtaining Zhou Ziyuan's consent. It was at this moment that the years of affection seemed to have dissipated. So, Zhou Ziyuan canceled the wedding, destroyed all the memories between them, and resolutely entered the closed research laboratory on the wedding day. Thereafter, there was no more relationship with her. I've explained to you countless times, Huaichuan only has 1 year left with cancer. His biggest wish is to leave a child for his family. He saved my life back then. Now I must help him fulfill this wish. Zhou Ziyuan had heard this kind of rhetoric no less than 1,000 times in this month. The first time he heard Jiang Wanyi make this request, he had no hesitation in saying that he would not accept it. However, she did not die and brought it up almost every day. Jiang Wanyi's attitude had also changed from tentatively asking for his consent in the beginning to arguing with him in a justified manner now. It was as if he was a great sinner if he didn't agree. But even if it was a life-saving favor, where was the rationale for repaying it by having a child? But a month of arguing makes Zhou Ziyuan physically and mentally exhausted. He has lost the strength to persuade Jiang Wanyi to change her mind. Just look at this woman he fell in love with for 5 years, hoarsely voiced question. Wan-yi, we're going to have our wedding next month, and now you want to give birth to another man. What about me? What do you take me for? For the first time, Jiang Wanyi saw Zhou Ziyuan look so depressed, as if he was surrounded by dark clouds. Her attitude softened slightly. Ziyuan, I know it's hard to accept, but I'm the only one who can help Huaichuan. There's no way I can watch him leave with regrets. Besides, it's just artificial insemination. Nothing will happen to us. If you love me, you must be able to understand me, right? Hearing these words, Zhou Ziyuan's heart kept falling down. He already understood that Jiang Wanyi had long since made the decision to give Song Huaichuan a child no matter what. As for his point of view, it was merely dispensable. Jiang Wanyi wanted to continue saying something, but was interrupted by a ringing cell phone. She looked at the screen and took her cell phone to the balcony. Zhou Ziyuan looked at her back, and a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He and Jiang Wanyi were considered childhood friends, in the same class since elementary school, and even in the same school in college. Zhou Ziyuan knew that he liked her since childhood, and had always accompanied her silently, but Jiang Wanyi had never responded. Until the graduation occasion, she finally saw his dedication, agreed to be his girlfriend. In theory, they have known each other for more than 20 years, and after becoming lovers each other should be the existence of each other's closest trust. But together for 5 years, Zhou Ziyuan never touched Jiang Wanyi's cell phone, even if connected to the phone is also behind his back. I remember one time she had a high fever lying in bed resting. Her cell phone has been constantly popping up messages. Zhou Ziyuan was worried about disturbing her, so he was just going to turn off the mute. The moment her fingers touched the cell phone, she just opened her eyes and saw Zhou Ziyuan's action and directly and indiscriminately questioned Zhou. No matter how he explains, she will not listen. That night, Zhou Ziyuan curled up alone on the sofa for the whole night. Zhou Ziyuan only thought it was her character, believed that he will one day be able to completely into her heart. But 5 years have passed, and it still hasn't changed. Even now she was going to give birth to another man, without the slightest consideration for him, her rightful boyfriend. Jiang Wanyi's face was clearly filled with joy when she came in, grabbing her jacket as she put it on while walking towards the door. I have something to go out for a while, so you can think it over yourself. Zhou Ziyuan listened to her footsteps as she hurriedly left, his heart in a state of silence. The only person who could make her so anxious was probably Song Huaichuan. Sure enough, not long afterwards Song Huaichuan sent a photo. When Zhou Ziyuan zoomed in to see what was on it, it almost made him unable to stand. It was a pregnancy checklist, and the name of the pregnant woman was none other than Jiang Wanyi. The gestation time even made him feel like the sky was spinning. It was clearly written that the pregnancy was 3 weeks. In other words, a month ago, Jiang Wanyi had already been artificially inseminated for Song Hui-chuan's child. She had never thought to discuss with him to obtain his consent. If that was the case, why did Jiang Wanyi persistently ask him this month? To make herself a little more at ease. Zhou Ziyun suddenly felt like all his strength had been drained away, and his whole body sat paralyzed on the floor. His heart was like being clenched by a large hand, making him unable to breathe. No wonder just now, Jiang Wanyi couldn't stop her eyebrows from being happy and left in a hurry after making the call. It turned out that she knew that the artificial insemination was successful and that she was pregnant. I'm afraid that she had already rushed to the hospital to celebrate with Song Hui-chuan by now. Zhou Ziyun painfully closed his eyes, endless sadness spreading in his heart. He really couldn't believe that the woman he had loved for so many years had gotten pregnant with another man's child just like that. Obviously, only 2 months ago he proposed successfully and planned to have a wedding next month. Even the wedding dress and hotel himself had been booked early. He has been looking forward to the wedding day, looking forward to holding Jiang Wanyi's hand together into the marriage hall. But now, all the expectations have become a bubble, fading into the air. At this time, the cell phone buzzed with a vibration to recall Zhou Ziyuan's thoughts. He subconsciously clicked answered it. The schoolmate's crisp voice came through. Ziyuan, I know you're getting married, but I still want to ask again. Are you really not going to consider coming to our lab anymore? Your teacher's most talented student, and he's always wanted you to come over and help him. Considering that you're going to start a family soon, teacher said that he could license you to stay in the lab for 2 months and take half a month off, so that you'd also have time to reunite with your wife. The matter of teacher setting up a new laboratory in the capital city was known to Zhou Ziyuan as early as half a year ago. He had personally called to invite Zhou Ziyuan to do research in his lab. However, once in the lab, one could no longer contact the outside world and could only leave when a research was over. It was a short period of 1 or 2 months, and a long period of 1 or 2 years. Zhou Ziyuan was unwilling to be separated from Jiang Wanyi for so long, and even more so, he couldn't bear to have no contact with her. So he refused the teacher's invitation. But now, his mind unconsciously floated back to that pregnancy test slip. Jiang Wanyi was already pregnant with another man's child. Since she had never considered their relationship and the upcoming marriage, there was no need for this marriage either. Zhou Ziyuan's grip on the cell phone unconsciously tightened. Elder sister, I'm willing to come to the lab. No need to take a vacation, just follow the normal progress of the experiment. Elder sister's surprised voice rang out. That's great. Sensei must be very happy. How soon do you plan to come over? How about a week after the wedding, so you can still go on your honeymoon? Zhou Ziyuan replied softly, no need, the day of the wedding. His eyes went to the calendar on the table. The 10th of next month was heavily circled by him with a red marker. Originally, he wanted to keep reminding himself of how long it was until the wedding, so that it would be convenient to arrange the relevant matters. Now, it had become a countdown to leaving Jiang Wanyi. There were still the last 15 days left. Think of it as a departure buffer for a relationship of more than 20 years. After 15 days, he and Jiang Wanyi would never see each other again. Jiang Wanyi did not come back that night, and Zhou Ziyuan did not call to ask where she was. He had already seen it in Song Hui-chuan's circle of friends. They came out of the hospital in the afternoon and hoofed it back to Song Hui-chuan's house, informing him of his family's news of the pregnancy. The photo showed Song Hui-chuan's grandmother affectionately holding Jiang Wanyi's hand and saying something, and she was smiling gently as her other hand stroked her belly. In the 5 years they had been together, Jiang Wanyi had only returned home with him once after agreeing to his proposal. Even though there was less than half an hour's drive between their 2 homes, she hadn't taken the initiative to come once before that. It was because she said she didn't like staying with the elders and felt uncomfortable. Even that time when she went back, her attitude was merely polite and courteous, far from being as gentle as she was facing the Song family in the photo. Zhou Ziyuan converged the bitterness under his eyes and turned off his cell phone. The next day, Zhou Ziyuan asked a few friends to tell them the news that the wedding was cancelled. When Jiang Wanyi said that she didn't like weddings, she felt that it was all just some meaningless formalism. It was only at Zhou Ziyuan's insistence that she reluctantly agreed to hold a small wedding, only inviting some of her closest friends and family. Everyone around him knew about his feelings for Jiang Wanyi, so his friends were surprised to hear that the wedding was cancelled. Didn't you like Jiang Wanyi for so many years? It's not easy for you to let go of the beauty? Zhou Ziyuan's heart was flooded with dense astringency. Do you want to let go? Definitely not. He had been chasing after Jiang Wanyi for 20 years before finally waiting for her to nod and agree to marry him. How easy was it to let go of this 20-year relationship? But in fact, this relationship from the beginning is not equaled. Because from the beginning to the end, he chased Jiang Wanyi's footsteps. And she never stopped. Originally, Zhou Ziyuan didn't care, he thought, since he could spend 20 years to get her to agree to marry him. Then he must be able to truly enter her heart as well. It was just a matter of time. After the marriage, they still have a long day. He can wait until the moment she completely open up her heart for himself. But since half a year Song Huichuan, this so-called life-saving benefactor, appeared, everything is different. Zhou Ziyuan realized that Jiang Wanyi was not a cold face to everyone. She always looked gentle in front of Song Huichuan, but was stingy to show a smile in front of him. At that time, Zhou Ziyuan comforted himself in his heart that Song Huichuan had saved her life. She was just repaying the favor of saving her life. But I didn't expect that after learning that Song Huichuan had found out about cancer, she was able to agree to have a child for Song Huichuan to keep the queen. She even pretended to ask for his consent on the surface, but secretly, she had already been artificially inseminated to carry a child. At that moment, Zhou Ziyuan clearly realized that he and Jiang Wanyi would not go any further. Even if the 20-year relationship is hard to part with, it will have to be ruthlessly plucked out. Zhou Ziyuan didn't tell them the reason, only saying that he was going to the lab soon and would only be able to contact the outside world every long time in the future. In order to apologize, he accompanied his friends to play until midnight before going home. By the time Zhou Ziyuan arrived home, Jiang Wanyi had just arrived home as well. She frowned at the smell of alcohol on Zhou Ziyuan's body and backed up a few steps away from him, one hand covering her mouth and nose. You stay away from me. Smelling this smell makes me want to vomit. Zhou Ziyuan's gaze touched her other hand, unconsciously protecting her belly, and smiled to himself. With such an obvious action, I'm afraid that Jiang Wanyi had no intention of hiding it from Zhou Ziyuan at all. However, since she did not have the intention of directly picking it out, Zhou Ziyuan naturally would not take the initiative to mention it. Zhou Ziyuan didn't say anything else and turned around to go in and take a shower. When he came out, Jiang Wanyi was typing away on her cell phone, her eyes smiling. Zhou Ziyuan only glanced at it and planned to go back to the bedroom to sleep. Unexpectedly, she suddenly called out to him. I have something to discuss with you. Zhou Ziyuan's footsteps paused. The last time he had heard these words, it was a month ago when she had first proposed to have a child for Song Huichuan, and they had had a month-long argument after that. Now that she had managed to get pregnant, what else could be going on? Don't go to the wedding photos tomorrow. Zhou Ziyuan looked at the calendar on the table, and under tomorrow's date the words wedding photos were written large in marker. Although he didn't know why Jiang Wanyi wanted to cancel the wedding photo shoot, but originally he didn't intend to tie the knot in this marriage. Even if Jiang Wanyi hadn't uttered these words, he would have found an excuse to cancel the photo shoot, and now that Jiang Wanyi had taken the initiative to put forward this request in turn, it saved him a lot of trouble. Zhou Ziyuan nodded. Good, I will call and tell the photographer to cancel the shoot. As soon as the words fell, Jiang Wanyi's heart froze. She did not expect Zhou Ziyuan to agree so readily. Originally, she had thought that Zhou Ziyuan would pursue the cause. After all the processes regarding the wedding had been finalized by him after carefully doing a long time of strategy. Even the photographer who took the wedding photos this time was the one who spent a large sum of money to increase the price before the photographer agreed to jump the queue to take the photos, just to take the most perfect wedding photos. But she didn't expect Zhou Ziyuan to calmly agree after she finished speaking. Jiang Wanyi looked at Zhou Ziyuan with a complicated expression. There's no need to cancel. Huai Chuan said that there is no possibility of him getting married in this life. He wants to take a wedding photo with me as if he had gotten married himself, and he won't have any more regrets. Let Huai Chuan and I take it together tomorrow, and we'll just go back later to make up for the wedding photos. Jiang Wanyi's tone was as light as if she was talking about what she was going to eat today, as it was the same as the day she said she was going to artificially inseminate Song Huai Chuan a month ago. On the surface, it was a discussion, but in fact, every word revealed that she had already made a decision, but only to inform Zhou Ziyuan. The lowered eyes hid the sarcasm in the bottom of Zhou Ziyuan's eyes. Later, Jiang Wanyi doesn't know yet that he will only stay in Rongqing for the last 13 days. Not knowing that they no longer had a future, Zhou Ziyuan softly answered yes, and then went back to the bedroom to prepare for rest. In any case, this marriage is not closed, so who Jiang Wanyi takes wedding photos with has nothing to do with him. Jiang Wanyi looked at Zhou Ziyuan's back and inexplicably felt a little uneasy in her heart. Zhou Ziyuan is too calm, not even a question, so that her originally prepared words all did not come in handy. But at this time Song Huai Chuan called. She will be in the heart of that doubt all put aside, walked to the balcony to answer the phone. Zhou Ziyuan woke up just as Jiang Wanyi was about to leave the house. She instructed as she put on her shoes. After taking the wedding photos, Huai Chuan and I plan to go out for a few days of traveling. He's always wanted to go to Hokkaido. I'll accompany him. Let's keep everything simple for the wedding. I don't have the time to rehearse and set up, just decide everything. Don't use to ask me. Zhou Ziyuan swallowed the toast in his mouth before returning. Good. Everything was kept simple. There would be no wedding photos, no guests, no officiant for this wedding. There would also be no groom. Seeing Zhou Ziyuan just silently eating his breakfast so calmly, Jiang Wanyi's heart was a little strange, and after thinking about it, she added, Let's go to Europe for our honeymoon after the wedding. I remember you always wanted to go. If he had heard Jiang Wanyi take the initiative to propose a honeymoon before, Zhou Ziyuan must have immediately excitedly started to do all kinds of strategies. After all, he had wanted Jiang Wanyi to accompany him on a trip before, and she had never agreed to do so, only saying that she didn't like it and felt that traveling was tiring. Now Zhou Ziyuan just concentrated on eating the bread and did not respond. There wouldn't even be a wedding. Where would there be a honeymoon? Jiang Wanyi looked at him with some surprise and wanted to say something, but when her eyes touched the clock on the wall, she hurriedly opened the door and left, leaving only a sentence. Wait for me to come back to say. Zhou Ziyuan picked up the calendar on the table and used a marker pen to draw a big cross on the words wedding photos. There are still 12 days to go to. After breakfast, Zhou Ziyuan was ready to start packing up his things, and by the way, clear out the unnecessary things in the house. There were only photo albums with no more than 5 photos, a projector that was already dusty, and a couple's pajamas that hadn't been worn once. Together for 5 years, every single thing in the house was carefully selected by him and added little by little, gradually transforming an empty house into a full and cozy look today. But in fact, a closer look, a lot of things Jiang Wanyi never used. She said that even if she fell in love with Zhou Ziyuan, she is an independent individual and does not like to use couple items, which makes her feel like she is tied up all the time. Zhou Ziyuan retrieved his thoughts and continued to start cleaning things up. Keeping these things after he left would be in her way anyway, so he might as well clean them up now. Also destroy the memories between them, through and through. For the next week in a row, Jiang Wanyi didn't come back. Zhou Ziyuan, however, can always know what she is doing. After all, there is a Song Huai Chuan who loves to post everything in the circle of friends. It is difficult for Zhou Ziyuan to think that he does not know. The two of them went to the hot springs together, saw the sea, and took pictures together against the sunrise. In his circle of friends, Zhou Ziyuan once again saw a different Jiang Wanyi. It turns out that she can also be able to behave like an ordinary girl in love. Just not in front of him. Zhou Ziyuan didn't pay too much attention to where they went and what they played every day. Each time he just swept a glance and then quickly glided past. He hadn't been idle in the past few days either. There were so many things in the house that he cleaned it up for several days before it was completely packed up. He also took the time to go back to his home and told Joe's father and mother that he was about to go to the lab and that he would only be able to contact the outside world for a long period of time after that. Father Joe was a little surprised. You and Juan E are about to get married. Won't you be separated in the future? Mother Joe also had worry in her eyes, holding Zhou Ziyuan's hand and advising. Think about it again, son. You and Wani have hardly come this far. I'm afraid that if you go to the lab, Wanishi will disagree, then your wedding. Zhou Ziyuan understood what mom and dad meant. For so many years, his obsession with Jiang Wani Zhou father and mother have all seen in their eyes, and Jiang Wani's attitude towards him they are also clear. Before deciding to propose, they had politely advised him that his weight in Jiang Wani's heart was not heavy and asked him to reconsider. But Zhou Ziyuan felt confident that he would be able to change Jiang Wan Yi and make her accept him completely. So Zhou's father and mother agreed. Now that the wedding is approaching, Zhou's father and mother are worried that if he goes to the lab, Jiang Wani will disagree and may even cancel the wedding and break up with him. They were afraid that he would be hurt, so they wanted him to think it over. But now the person who decided to cancel the wedding was him, Zhou Ziyuan. Zhou Ziyuan told Zhou's father and mother about the cancellation of the wedding, and they didn't say anything for a long time. But he didn't tell Zhou's parents that Jiang Wani was pregnant with another man's child, worrying that they wouldn't be able to withstand such a blow, and only said that he wanted to continue to make a contribution to the field of scientific research. Father Zhou and Mother Zhou looked at each other, and since their son had already made a decision, they would fully support him. In the end, Father Zhou just sighed and patted him on the shoulder, saying that as long as he didn't regret it, he would be fine. After returning home, Zhou Ziyuan asked his young friend Lin Chuan to help him throw down all the things he packed. A cardboard box piled up in the living room took up a lot of space. The two moved up and down several times before finally throwing all the cardboard boxes. The room suddenly became empty. Lin Chuan looked a little emotional. He remembered that 2 months ago when Zhou Ziyuan's proposal was successful, he excitedly dragged him to drink wine for the whole night, and kept chanting that he was finally able to get what he wanted. Unexpectedly, only 2 short months ago, Zhou Ziyuan decided to cancel the wedding. You kid actually came for real, I thought that day you said canceling the wedding was just a joke. I've watched you follow behind Jiang Wan Yi for so many years. Tell me what's going on? Saying that, he threw Zhou Ziyuan a can of beer and took out a can to open himself. Probably because he was about to leave, Zhou Ziyuan actually had the desire to talk at this time. He told Lin Chuan everything that had happened in the past month, including the fact that Jiang Wan Yi is pregnant with Song Hui Chuan's child. Lin Chuan had witnessed everything that had happened between Zhou Ziyuan and Jiang Wan Yi and exploded after hearing it. Thanks to you treating her so well, as a result, she cuckolded you before the wedding, and even tried to get you to agree. What on earth was she thinking? Zhou Ziyuan shook his head and smiled to himself. Who knows, she said that Song Hui Chuan is her savior, and wants to fulfill all his wishes. Lin Chuan was full of indignation. Then you are also her savior. What gives her the right to treat you like this? Zhou Ziyuan took a sip of wine, and did not speak again. Perhaps she just didn't love him. But it didn't matter, soon he was going to leave her. On the 5th day of the countdown, Zhou Ziyuan mentioned his departure to the school. At first, in order to be with Jiang Wan Yi, Zhou Ziyuan refused his mentor's offer to let Zhou Ziyuan continue to follow him to do experiments, and chose to follow Jiang Wan Yi's footsteps to stay in Rongqing School as a teacher. Colleagues were surprised to see Zhou Ziyuan mention leaving his job. Why are you leaving your job, Mr. Zhou? A few days ago you even sent us wedding candies. Are you going home to be a full-time cook? Teacher Jiang can be so happy. Some colleagues teased. Zhou Ziyuan smiled as he hugged his things. No, the wedding is cancelled. When Zhou Ziyuan returned home, as soon as he opened the door, he saw Jiang Wanyi, who he hadn't seen for a week, and Song Huichuan sitting on the sofa. Jiang Wanyi saw Zhou Ziyuan holding something in his hand and subconsciously asked, "What are you holding these things for?" Zhou Ziyuan casually found an excuse. They are all unused, I took them back. Jiang Wanyi nodded, scanning around the room before speaking with some doubt. I've only not been back for a week. Why do I feel like there are a lot of things missing in the house? Zhou Ziyuan took the boxes back to the bedroom and put them away, calmly replying, I just cleaned up some unnecessary trash. Jiang Wanyi wanted to say something else, but was interrupted by Song Huichuan. Brother Zhou, it's been hard for Wanyi to accompany me on the trip these past few days, and I'd also like to thank you for agreeing to let her and I take wedding photos to fulfill Zhou Ziyuan's dream. Let's do it this way. I'll treat you guys to dinner as a thank you for taking care of me. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you for a while in the future. I hope that you won't resent me, Brother Zhou. Zhou Ziyuan looked at Song Huichuan's darkly provocative gaze, probably could guess that he was a little bit unable to sit still. After all, from the time he received that pregnancy test slip until now, he hadn't shown any behavior and hadn't even questioned Jiang Wanyi a single time. But Zhou Ziyuan didn't want to do some more meaningless fighting with him now, when 5 days later, he would never show up in front of Jiang Wanyi again. Right now, he just wanted to deal with everything on this side and leave conveniently. Seeing that Zhou Ziyuan didn't reply, Song Huichuan spoke in a hesitant tone. Wanyi, is Brother Zhou. Is he unhappy? After all, you guys are about to get married, but... Hearing Song Huichuan's words, Jiang Wanyi's brows immediately wrinkled, unpleasantly accusing Zhou Ziyuan. Huichuan sincerely wants to thank us. Why are you putting on a face here? It's not just a meal. It's not like we're going to poison you. You must go to me. Zhou Ziyuan hadn't even said a word yet, but in Jiang Wanyi's mouth, he was already defined as a sinner. In the end, Zhou Ziyuan was still pulled by Jiang Wanyi. When they arrived at the restaurant, the waiter came to ask them what dishes to order. Zhou Ziyuan had just flipped through the menu when he heard Jiang Wanyi open her mouth. Don't be heavy on oil and spice, and don't put cilantro in all the dishes. After the dishes were served, Jiang Wanyi thoughtfully helped Song Huichuan clip the dishes into a bowl. Then she pushed a plate of prawns towards him. Huichuan can't eat seafood now. This is specially ordered for you. Looking at the plate of prawns, Zhou Ziyuan immediately lost all appetite and put down his chopsticks. I'm allergic to seafood. How ridiculous. Having been in love for 5 years, Jiang Wanyi didn't know that he, her boyfriend, was allergic to seafood, but she knew Song Huichuan's taboos perfectly well, and she was able to memorize even such details as not eating cilantro. Jiang Wanyi looked blank for a moment. When she looked at Zhou Ziyuan again, her eyes rarely showed a few hints of guilt, and then she added a few more dishes. However, Zhou Ziyuan did not move his chopsticks again during this meal, and only silently drank the water in his cup. After the meal, just after walking down the steps, Zhou Ziyuan once again received a call from his senior sister. Ziyuan, teacher asked me to make sure again that you are going to follow the normal experiment schedule, right? The first experiment in the lab involves a confidential project. It's likely that there will be no way to contact the outside world for a year or two. Zhou Ziyuan's gaze fell on Jiang Wanyi and Song Huichuan in front of him. The two of them were walking side by side, and Jiang Wanyi would still involuntarily press her hand against her stomach as she descended the steps. Zhou Ziyuan's voice was calmed. Okay. Teacher's sister breathed a sigh of relief when she received an affirmative answer. That's good. Teacher was afraid that you wouldn't be able to part with your wife. Zhou Ziyuan withdrew his gaze and turned towards the other side. The wedding is cancelled. I'm ready to leave. A puzzled voice came from behind the words. Who's leaving? Jiang Wanyi had just sent Song Huichuan to the car when she heard the last few words. Zhou Ziyuan realized that she hadn't heard the words in front of her and casually found an excuse. My friend is leaving after a while. Jiang Wanyi nodded and stopped pursuing the matter. On the penultimate 4th day, Jiang Wanyi brought back her and Song Huichuan's wedding photos. She held her cell phone in one hand to video Song Huichuan and held the picture frame in one hand to show it to him, smiling with a sweet face. Huichuan, our wedding photos were washed out, and when I went to pick them up the staff all said that we came out great. Zhou Ziyuan happened to come out to get water when he said this. A trace of embarrassment crossed Jiang Wanyi's eyes as she looked at Zhou Ziyun to say something. Zhou Ziyun glanced at the photo and commented seriously, "It does look quite good." He had spent a high price to hire this photographer in the first place because he wanted to bring out the most beautiful look of Jiang Wanyi. He thought that he would definitely feel unprecedented happiness when he saw the finished picture. The Jiang Wanyi in her wedding photo was indeed exactly as he had fantasized. The only thing that was different was that the groom beside her was not him. But his heart will not set off another wave because of this. From the day he learned that Jiang Wanyi was pregnant, his feelings for her had already been fully withdrawn. Instead, Jiang Wanyi froze. She suddenly realized that Zhou Ziyun didn't seem to have approached her for a long time to speak properly, and even the week she and Song Huichuan went out on a trip didn't send a single message. This made her a little uncomfortable. Song Huichuan was still talking at length in the video, and she shook her head to push that uneasy thought down, just assuming that Zhou Ziyun was too tired from preparing for the wedding. On the penultimate day, Zhou Ziyun thought that once he entered the lab, he would have to bring everything in by himself, and he needed to prepare a little bit of commonly used medication. So he went to the hospital with the intention of taking some medicine to prepare. He didn't expect to meet Jiang Wanyi and Song Huichuan, who had just come out of the maternity checkup. Jiang Wanyi's eyes rarely crossed a trace of panic, just opened her mouth to say something, but was Song Huichuan preempted. He walked up to Zhou Ziyun and wanted to kneel down. "Brother Zhou, I know that you haven't agreed to Wanyi's pregnancy yet, but I just can't wait any longer. The doctor said that I still have at most 1 year left. I really want to see the child born with my own eyes. When the child is born, I will immediately carry it away. It definitely won't affect the relationship between you and Wanyi." Zhou Ziyun hadn't even opened his mouth before Jiang Wanyi pulled him up with eyes full of heartache. "How can you be like this when your health is not good?" Saying this, she looked at Zhou Ziyun again. "Since you know, then I won't hide it from you. Don't worry, the baby is still small in months now. It won't affect our wedding." If it was the Zhou Ziyun of a month ago, he would probably be angry, would collapse, would despair, and would fall into self-Zhou Ziyun doubt. Doubt yourself, this boyfriend is not where to do a bad job to make Jung'un willingly pregnant with another man's child. But after experiencing this period of time, Zhou Ziyun has figured out. It's not that he didn't do a good enough job, but that Jiang Wanyi didn't love him. The only way to do so is to disregard his feelings and do such a thing. Zhou Ziyun now knew the news of Jiang Wanyi's pregnancy and had already let go of all his feelings for her, so there was no need for them to act like Zhou Ziyun was going to beat the lovebirds. Zhou Ziyun retracted his gaze after glancing at them silently. "I see." After saying that, Zhou Ziyun took the medicine and prepared to go back. It was almost the day of his departure, and his luggage needed to be organized again. The two people on the opposite side obviously did not expect Zhou Ziyun to be so calm. Especially Jiang Wanyi, who looked at Zhou Ziyun's departing back with a complicated expression. It was clear that Zhou Ziyun had been fussing about the pregnancy for a month before, but now that he had learned of the pregnancy news, he did not react at all. Inexplicably, Jiang Wanyi's heart was a little uneasy, as if something had changed silently without her knowing it. Zhou Ziyun had just walked to the stairs when he was tugged on the sleeve by Song Huichuan, who had caught up with him. At this time, Jiang Wanyi was still far behind, and Song Huichuan revealed his true colors. "Zhou Ziyun, how does it feel to raise a child for another man? To have a wedding ceremony with your own wife carrying someone else's seed? I think only you can endure it." Zhou Ziyun didn't want to start some meaningless argument with him, shook off his hand and prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, Song Huichuan's body tilted downward when he exerted force. Zhou Ziyun subconsciously pulled his hand to prevent him from falling. Only before Zhou Ziyun's hand could be loosened, a rebuke with anger came from behind him. "What are you doing?" Jiang Wanyi was still wondering why Zhou Ziyun was so calm. Now that she saw this scene, she instantly understood that he was only pretending to be calm. In his heart, he still could not accept this matter. Seeing Jiang Wanyi come, Song Huichuan immediately changed to a resigned expression. "Wanyi, I just want to thank Brother Zhou for being so generous, but I didn't expect him to." Hearing Song Huaichuan's words, Jiang Wanyi's face immediately sank. Zhou Ziyun, I didn't expect you to be such a person. You immediately apologized to Huaichuan. Hearing her indiscriminate accusations, Zhou Ziyun could not help but be infuriated and laugh. I apologize? You yourself go and pull up the CCTV to see if I should apologize or not. Zhou Ziyun didn't expect Jiang Wanyi to decide that it was him who tried to push Song Huaichuan down the stairs without even tuning the surveillance. Huaichuan is a patient. Could he still intentionally harm his own body? A hint of panic flashed in Song Huaichuan's eyes. Forget it, Wanyi. It's normal for Brother Zhou to be angry and treat me like this. Let's go. Jiang Wanyi, however, refused. No, he must apologize to you today. Zhou Ziyun didn't budge at all either. He wouldn't admit to something he hadn't done. Song Huaichuan was worried that if he kept pestering Jiang Wanyi, she would really go to adjust the CCTV so that he would be exposed, so he covered his stomach and said that he was not feeling well. Jiang Wanyi's angry face instantly changed to worry, and hurriedly helped Song Huaichuan to find a doctor. Zhou Ziyun looked at their departing backs, and endless astringency couldn't help but spread in his heart. 20 years of companionship, 5 years of being together day and night, but it could not be exchanged for a single bit of trust from Jiang Wanyi to Zhou Ziyun. Fortunately, he had now come to his senses and was still able to pull out in time. This day, Jiang Wanyi did not come back. Zhou Ziyun thought that she should be busy taking care of Song Huaichuan, who was sick. On the last day before leaving, Zhou Ziyun sent his packed luggage to the lab, leaving only a backpack behind. In the evening, Jiang Wanyi returned. Her face still carried anger. Huaichuan is still lying in the hospital. He's a patient. Even if you really didn't mean it, can't you be a little more generous and let him be? Why do you have to be so mean? Generous. Zhou Ziyun felt that he had already been generous. Let out the original belongs to his suit and photographer to Song Huaichuan wedding photos. Let out the woman who will become his wife to Song Huaichuan child. Now, Zhou Ziyun, the position beside Jiang Wanyi, was also going to give up to Song Huaichuan. Jiang Wanyi's remaining light noticed the large red circle on the calendar book, and her expression eased quite a bit. All right, we're getting married tomorrow, so I won't argue with you. You can go apologize to Huaichuan after the wedding is done. After that, we'll go on our honeymoon. Have you planned the honeymoon trip yet? Zhou Ziyun did not respond. If Jiang Wanyi had been a little more attentive, she would have realized that the house didn't have any decorations about the wedding at all. Before the words of confession could be uttered by Zhou Ziyun, Jiang Wanyi's phone rang. Song Huaichuan's voice came from the other end of the phone, and Jiang Wanyi's expression tensed up. You wait. Zhou Ziyun will come over right away. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Wanyi immediately got up and walked towards the door. Huaichuan is a bit uncomfortable. I'll go and check on him. I'll rush back before the wedding. Tomorrow morning you remember to wait to go to the hotel first and wait for me. Waiting for the sound of the door closing to be heard, the words that were spinning in Zhou Ziyun's mouth came out. Let's break up, Jiang Wanyi. The wedding is cancelled. The sound dissipated into the empty room. Only the clock on the wall ticked with a sound. Zhou Ziyun sat in the living room from the evening to the early morning hours, watching the outside go from darkness to day. The cell phone buzzed with an alert. There were still 2 hours until boarding time. Zhou Ziyun got up and went into the bedroom to take out his long-packed backpack, and took out a marker to put a big cross on the heavily circled number 10 on the calendar. Then wrote down a sentence. Jiang Wanyi, let's break up. He placed the calendar in the most prominent position, picked up his backpack, took one last look at this place where he had lived for 5 years, and then went out to take a taxi to the airport. Goodbye, Jiang Wanyi. On the other side, Jiang Wanyi waited for Song Huaichuan's condition to stabilize before leaving from the hospital. While walking on the road, she sent a message to Zhou Ziyun, asking him if the wedding was all ready. She was already on her way to the hotel. But until Jiang Wanyi got on the car, she didn't receive a reply from Zhou Ziyun. She opened her cell phone and was about to ask again, but realized that their last message was already half a month ago. Jiang Wanyi flipped upwards through the chat logs, which were almost full of "wait." Sometimes it was a message from Jo Zeon asking what to eat today. Sometimes it was asking for her opinion about the wedding. But Jung Won-yee's replies were each very simple. Whatever, anything, you decide. Jo Zeon will not be affected in any way, still giving her messages every day. However, in the past half a month, there was no communication between them. A touch of strangeness crossed Jung Won-yee's heart. Why had he not sent her a message for so long? Thinking of this, Jung Won-yee's mind could not help but flash back to the unbelief in Jo Zeon's eyes when she informed him a month ago that she was going to be artificially inseminated to conceive Song Hye-chwan's child. Having known each other for 20 years, this was the first time that Jung Won-yee had seen such a pained expression on his face. It was also the first time he had shown such violent opposition to her words. But after that, he only firmly disagreed with the matter of artificial insemination, and in other aspects remained the same as before. It seemed that after she had last brought up her desire to artificially inseminate Song Hye-chwan in front of Jo Zeon half a month ago, communication between them had been lost. Not only did Jo Zeon no longer send her messages, even when she was at home, she would barely take the initiative to talk to herself. The more Jung Won-yee recalled, the more uneasy she felt in her heart. Her heart thumped as if something bad was about to happen. While comforting herself that it was only because there were too many things going on with the recent wedding preparations for Jo Zeon to be like this, she asked the driver to speed up. Jung Won-yee looked at her cell phone and still hadn't received a reply. Her grip on the phone couldn't help but tighten. By the time she arrived at the hotel, a few of her good friends and family members had already arrived. They were gathering to discuss something and immediately surrounded Jung Won-yee when they saw her figure. Mother Jung frowned at her daughter, who had hurriedly arrived. "Won-yee, why aren't you even wearing a wedding dress? Where's Zae-yuan? Didn't he come with you?" Her friend also asked in disbelief when he saw that she was alone. "Yes, why don't you see the groom? You the bride haven't even changed your wedding dress yet?" When Jung Won-yee heard that they hadn't seen Jo Zeon's figure either, a flash of panic rose in her heart. Last night before leaving she had clearly told him to come directly to the wedding site in the morning. Now where did he go? Could it be that he went to the banquet hall first? Jung Won-yee reluctantly smiled. Zae-yuan should be at the banquet hall watching the scene. After saying that she was ready to rush towards the banquet hall, but then she remembered that she had no idea which banquet hall the wedding had been scheduled for. Jo Zeon hadn't spoken to her about it, and she had never asked. The people around her knew even less, otherwise they wouldn't have waited in the hotel lobby. Jung Won-yee had to pull a staff member aside to ask. "I would like to ask which wedding banquet hall Mr. Jo Zeon has booked?" The staff took out the registration form and flipped through it, replying politely. "Mr. Jo Zeon booked hall number 3. Jung Won-yee unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. It seemed that she had overthought things, and it was really just that he was too busy during this period of time. When it was time for the honeymoon, she was unprecedentedly prepared to buy a gift to give to Jo Zeon voluntarily, to reward him for his dedication to the wedding during this period of time. However, the next second, the staff saw the notes in the last column of the form and spoke again in doubt. "But Mr. Jo called to cancel the reservation half a month ago. He said that the wedding has been cancelled." The staff's words were like a heavy hammer hitting the hearts of everyone present. Jung Won-yee's head suddenly went blank. "What do you mean, the wedding has been cancelled?" Jung Won-yee took a step back and shook her head incredulously. How could it be cancelled? Obviously, when he proposed 2 months ago, she could see the joy on his face that he couldn't hide in the slightest. How could he possibly cancel the wedding? The friends and family around her were even more confused. They hadn't misremembered the date either, so why would they say the wedding was cancelled? After confirming to the staff again and again that it was indeed Jo Zeon who had cancelled the wedding, Jung's mother suppressed the anger in her heart and pulled Jung Won-yee aside to ask, "What happened to Jo Zeon? Not long ago set a good wedding date. He not only did not come today but also cancelled the wedding. What exactly does he mean?" Looking at her daughter, who also had an expression that she had obviously just found out that the wedding had been cancelled, the anger in Jung's mother's heart intensified. She knew that Zhou Ziyuan and her daughter had known each other for 20 years, and she could also see his feelings for Wan Yi, which is why she was relieved to hand her daughter over to him. But she didn't expect that Zhou Ziyuan, who was supposed to be the groom on the day of the wedding, not only didn't show up, but even canceled the wedding half a month ago. And surprisingly, they didn't even know. You hurry up and give him a call, ask him if he still wants to tie the knot or not. Only then did Jiang Wanyi take out her cell phone to call Zhou Ziyuan as if she was waking up from a dream. As she dialed out, her hand trembled slightly as she held the phone. However, at this time, Zhou Ziyuan had already embarked on a flight to the capital city, and the call was simply not reachable. There was only a cold mechanical tone coming from the receiver. Jiang Wanyi's heart gradually sank. Obviously, yesterday was fine. Why today is suddenly out of contact? She couldn't hold back any longer and immediately rushed back home, her heart still holding a trace of luck. But when she pushed open the door, the house was quiet. Obviously, Zhou Ziyuan is not at home. At this time, she suddenly realized that the photo frame that was originally placed on the desktop had disappeared. The frame contained one of the few photos of her and Zhou Ziyuan together. He had always treasured this photo and wiped the frame clean every day. Not only that, the razor in the bathroom, his clothes in the closet. Everything related to Zhou Ziyuan was gone. Jiang Wanyi's mind suddenly recalled that when she and Song Huaichuan had just returned home from traveling, the house seemed to be quite empty. It seemed like that was also the time when she hadn't seen the picture frame on the table again. But she had only vaguely felt that something was missing at that time, and coupled with Zhou Ziyuan's comment that he had cleaned up some unnecessary things, she hadn't paid much attention to it. It wasn't until now that she realized that Zhou Ziyuan wasn't clearing out unnecessary things. He was clearing out all of his belongings and all of the memories between them. Even he, as a person, had now disappeared without a trace. All that remained in Jiang Wanyi's eyes was confusion. Where exactly did he go and why did he do this? Her eyes were still searching through the house without giving up when she saw that the calendar on the table seemed to have words written on it. She rushed over and picked up the calendar, but what caught her eyes was only 5 words. Let's break up. In a flash, Jiang Wanyi only felt as if a thunderbolt had struck her. This idea that she had vaguely speculated about was finally confirmed at this moment. Zhou Ziyuan actually really wanted to break up with her. But why? They were going to get married today, and Jiang Wanyi knew that this was the wish that he had been reading for 20 years, so how could he possibly be willing to give it up? In the chaos of her thoughts, Jiang Wanyi's mind appeared Zhou Ziyuan's excessively calm face before he left. It seemed that he had something to say to himself at that time, but at that time, she was only concerned about rushing to the hospital to see Song Huaichuan and didn't listen to what he actually had to say. Just before she closed the door, she caught a glimpse of him sitting on the sofa, with no joy for the upcoming wedding on his face, and no anger at himself for going to Song Huaichuan before the wedding. The entire person was as calm as a pool of stagnant water. So last night, the words Zhou Ziyuan wanted to say were the breakup. Jiang Wanyi fell helplessly onto the sofa, her thoughts becoming a mess. The phone on the coffee table kept ringing. Her parents and friends called one after another. But she didn't have the energy to pick it up. She could never figure out the reason why Zhou Ziyuan broke up with her. According to all the staff, he even canceled the wedding half a month ago. Half a month ago. Jiang Wanyi snapped to mind that half a month ago was exactly the day she learned that she had successfully gotten pregnant by artificial insemination. On that day, she had originally wanted to propose artificial insemination again to convince Zhou Ziyuan to agree. However, Song Huaichuan sent a message saying that the test results had come out and that she was pregnant. Joy washed over her and she hurriedly aborted the conversation to rush to the hospital. The memories of the past half-month also gradually and clearly came to mind. Canceling the wedding photos and traveling out with Song Huaichuan. Zhou Ziyuan's attitude towards these matters had always been as if it was none of his business. If it was before, he would have messed with himself. Jiang Wanyi was a little flustered in her heart, and at the same time, she also had a sense of disbelief. So from that time, he had already planned to leave. but he clearly knew that Song Huichuan was his savior, and that she did all this just to return the favor. So why couldn't she understand herself? When she hid the artificial insemination from him, she was only thinking that artificial insemination would not be so simple to succeed. If she obtained his consent before starting the artificial insemination, she was worried that Song Huichuan would not have much time left and could not let him see her child being born, so she immediately carried out the first insemination. Her original plan was to persuade him to agree while performing the insemination, and she believed that he loved her and would definitely compromise in the end. But she didn't expect it to go so well, and it worked on the first try, disrupting her original plan. Just clearly in the hospital when she learned of her pregnancy, he clearly did not show drastic opposition, and after that, he did not even mention it again. And now why would he suddenly propose to break up the day before the wedding? What Jiang Wanyi doesn't know is that Zhou Ziyuan didn't object violently, because he already knew about the pregnancy. The breakup was not a sudden decision. As early as half a month ago, the word breakup has been rooted in his mind. He just used 15 days to completely consume his feelings for Jiang Wanyi for the past 20 years. Jiang Wanyi unwillingly picked up her cell phone again and called him. The moment the call was connected, the initial panic was replaced by anger. On the other hand, after a 2-hour flight, Zhou Ziyuan finally arrived in the capital city. Before taking off, his senior sister had sent him a message saying that she was worried that he would not be able to find the exact address and had specially arranged for someone to pick him up. There were a lot of people picking up the plane, and Zhou Ziyuan's eyes went back and forth several times without seeing anyone holding up a sign with his name on it. He was about to take out his cell phone to give his senior sister a call to ask if the person who had picked him up had arrived yet, when he heard a delicate shout from behind him. "Senior brother." Zhou Ziyuan turned around to see a girl with a sweet smile on her face walking towards him. "Excuse me, and you are?" He looked at this girl feeling somewhat familiar, but could never recall who exactly she was. The girl in front of him feigned annoyance and glared at him, but her voice carried undisguised joy. "Senior brother, but it's only been 5 years since I've seen you, and you've forgotten about me as your little sister? Beware that I'll find a teacher to complain to." The red-eyed little girl in the lab 5 years ago, and the figure in front of him gradually overlapped. He looked at the person in front of him with some surprise. "Your senior sister Lin." 5 years ago, when Zhou Ziyuan was about to graduate, his teacher took in a new student named Lin Qinghuan. At that time, he was busy with graduation-related matters, and he didn't have much contact with this junior sister. The only impression he had left was that there was a problem with her experimental data, but he never found out what went wrong. It so happened that Zhou Ziyuan went to the lab to get something, and when he passed by the lab bench, he noticed Lin Qinghuan's red eyes. So he took the initiative to go forward to ask Lin Qinghuan need help. After she explained their problems, Zhou Ziyuan step by step to carefully check, and finally helped her find out where the problem lies. I didn't expect that after 5 years, the little girl who almost shed a tear because of the experiment had changed so much that he didn't recognize her for a moment. Lin Qinghuan naturally walked to Zhou Ziyuan's side to show him the way, her tone promising. "It seems that senior brother still remembers me as a senior sister. I thought that after not seeing you for 5 years, senior brother had already forgotten me cleanly." Zhou Ziyuan touched the tip of his nose, having spent a lot of time with a cold-faced personality like Jiang Wanyi over the past few years. He was momentarily a little unsure of how to get along with the vivacious Lin Qinghuan. Lin Qinghuan, however, did not care. Seeing that he had been unrelenting, immediately walked up and pulled his arm towards the parking lot. "Hurry up and go, senior brother. Teacher is looking forward to the stars and the moon waiting for you to come." The two sped all the way back to the lab. Standing in front of the teacher's office, Zhou Ziyuan was a bit hesitant to push the door in. When he was about to graduate, the teacher had advised him, hoping that he would stay and continue to do experiments. But at that time, Jiang Wanyi just agreed to be his girlfriend. His heart is naturally full of only her, so he chose to follow Jiang Wanyi to the school as a teacher and politely refused the teacher's good intentions. When Zhou Ziyuan received his teacher's invitation for the second time, the project of the laboratory in Beijing had just decided to start. The teacher persuaded him for a long time on the phone. But at that time, He and Jiangwani had already been together for 5 years, and he was even more reluctant to leave her, so he refused again. That phone call really made the teacher angry. Even half a month ago, it was the senior sister who called. I'm afraid the teacher is still angry with him in his heart. Lin Qinghuan's eyes rolled as she watched Zhou Ziyuan hover and decided to help him out. The next second, she raised her volume and shouted into the office. Teacher, senior brother is back. Zhou Ziyuan's pupils shrank and subconsciously reached out to cover Lin Qinghuan's mouth. Lin Qinghuan had just finished speaking before she could close her mouth, before Zhou Ziyuan's big hand covered it. Wet lips touched his warm palm. Both of them froze at the same time. Zhou Ziyuan withdrew his hand as if he had touched a hot potato. Lin Qinghuan turned her head and her eyes were a bit evasive, but the tip of her ear was quietly red. Zhou Ziyuan was at a loss for words when the teacher's voice came from inside the door. Don't hurry to come in. Zhou Ziyuan couldn't think of anything else and hurriedly adjusted his state and took a deep breath and pushed open the door. After not seeing him for 5 years, he noticed with a sharp eye that his teacher's head already had some gray hair. When he thought that he had ignored his teacher's repeated retentions and followed Jiangwani to leave back then, he couldn't stop feeling ashamed in his heart. The teacher looked towards this student that he was most optimistic about, and also the one that he felt most sorry for, and 1,000 words only turned into a sigh. This time when you come you can follow me well in the experiments. Zhou Ziyuan suppressed the raging emotions in his heart and nodded heavily. The teacher didn't say anything more and waved his hand for Lin Qinghuan to take him to the dormitory to put his things away. Zhou Ziyuan immediately put down his backpack when he arrived at the dormitory and lay down on the bed, letting out a comfortable sigh. From last night until now he had only squinted for those 2 hours on the airplane, and now he was already exhausted, and when he got into bed, sleepiness overtook him. He didn't even have time to unpack before he unknowingly fell asleep. Zhou Ziyuan was sleeping soundly when he was woken up by a cell phone ringing. He struggled to touch up his cell phone. His mind was not yet fully awake, and he clicked answer on instinct. On the other end of the phone came Jiangwani's questioning with anger. Zhou Ziyuan, where have you been? Jiangwani's voice exploded in Zhou Ziyuan's ears, causing him to instantly wake up. He looked at the time and realized that he had only just fallen asleep not long ago. The annoyance of being woken up combined with the exhaustion of his trip made his tone a little irritable. I've written clearly on the calendar that we broke up. It was fine if he didn't mention it, but when he did, Kang Wanyi's anger increased. She hadn't thought clearly about the reason until now. No, I didn't agree to it. And even if you want to break up, you have to give me a reason. You left me behind on the wedding day and walked away, only leaving me with a breakup. What is this? Listening carefully, Jiang Wanyi's voice was mixed with a trace of imperceptible aggravation. Because she had never thought of breaking up with Zhou Ziyuan, much less thought that she would be abandoned on her wedding date. Obviously, he had been by her side for 20 years. How could he suddenly leave? Zhou Ziyuan, however, only wanted to continue to catch up on his sleep at this time, not wanting to dwell too much with Jiang Wanyi. You're already pregnant with Song Huichuan's child. Do you think I would let a woman with another man's child in her belly become my wife? Besides, I can already see that you don't like me at all. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long while, and Zhou Ziyuan was almost on the verge of falling asleep again before Jiang Wanyi's somewhat hoarse voice came through. So, you're just going to break up with me for that child? Zhou Ziyuan did not reply that. One could only say that the child in her stomach was a fuse that ignited the already precarious emotional fortress between them. Through the past 6 months between her and Song Huichuan, Zhou Ziyuan realized that she could also have such a gentle side. At the same time, he also finally realized that she did not love him. That was the fundamental reason why he wanted to break up. Jiang Wanyi's voice came again. I don't agree to break up. Tell me where you are. I want to see you. Zhou Ziyuan, however, did not intend to see her again. The matter of breaking up was different from marriage. It did not require both parties to nod their heads in agreement at the same time. As long as one party decided to separate, then the relationship was over. Similarly, He believed that qualified exes should disappear from each other's lives as if they were dead. There was no need for him and Kang-won-ee to meet again. Let's just get together and leave each other with some decency. Without waiting for her to speak, Jo Seon hung up the phone. He then clicked on the call log and pulled Jang Won-ee's number into the blacklist. When he opened WeChat, he realized that she had also sent dozens of messages to himself. Initially in the morning it was to ask about the wedding. After that it was probably because she realized that he had left and kept asking where he had gone. The number of messages that Jang Won-ee had sent in one day today was worth the amount of messages she had sent in the past month. Jo Seon just roughly rummaged through the messages she sent, and then also pulled her into the blacklist. After that, he put his cell phone down and pulled the covers over his head to continue to sleep. Jang Won-ee froze for a moment after the phone was hung up. This was the first time he had taken the initiative to hang up the phone. What's more, he hadn't said anything clearly, so why did he hang up? She also still didn't know where the hell he had gone. Jang Won-ee continued to dial, but an icy tone came from the receiver. Sorry, the number you have dialed cannot be connected at the moment. Please dial again later. She was ready to send him a message again. However, the next second after the message was sent, Jang Won-ee saw a large red exclamation mark. The message has been sent, but it was rejected by the other party. Jang Won-ee's mind went blank. He had blacked out all of her contact information. It wasn't that Jo Seon hadn't been angry before, but he had never pulled her black. Flustered, a touch of anger was uncontrollably born in her heart. It was really because of that child. But she had clearly explained countless times that Song Hye-chwan had cancer and was her savior. Of course she had to help him fulfill his wish. Why couldn't Jo Seon understand and support her? But after the anger, Jang Won-ee was more panicked. She had never thought of breaking up with Jo Seon. But now she not only didn't know where he was, she didn't even have any contact information. How should she find him? In desperation, Jang Won-ee thought of his good friend Lin Chwan. Jo Seon took her to Lin Chwan's house during a friend's party, and she searched for him from memory. When Lin Chwan opened the door, he saw the dusty Jang Won-ee. Originally, Lin Chwan had been feeling bad for his good brother for chasing after Jang Won-ee without getting the appropriate response, but he couldn't say anything more because they were already boyfriend and girlfriend at that time. But ever since Lin Chwan heard Jo Seon talk about the reason for canceling the wedding, his dissatisfaction with Jang Won-ee had reached even more of a peak. He didn't understand how there could be such a white-eyed woman in the world. At this moment, when he saw Jang Won-ee appear in front of his door, his past dissatisfaction instantly erupted and he spoke in a conspiratorial manner. Yo, isn't this my good brother's ex-girlfriend who repaid me in kind? Why are you here with me? Lin Chwan actually knew about his pregnancy, but right now, Jang Won-ee couldn't care about anything else. She only wanted to quickly get news of Jo Seon. Where did Jo Seon go? Lin Chwan rolled his eyes. In the past, when Jo Seon was by her side every day, her attitude was nonchalant. Now that she broke up and the person left, yet she acted as if she cared more about him. I don't know. Lin Chwan finished in a bad mood and intended to close the door. Jang Won-ee subconsciously reached out to block it, and Lin Chwan was simply too late to react. Intense pain came from her hand, and Jang Won-ee's eyes were so painful that physiological tears flowed out of her eyes. She covered her hand and desperately tried to hold back the piercing pain, obstinately asking, I want to know where he went. Lin Chwan cursed. He really couldn't understand Jang Won-ee's operation. You're about to give birth to another man. Why do you care where my brother went? Hearing this, what else did Jang Won-ee not understand? His friend was also dissatisfied with the whole pregnancy thing, but there was a reason for it, not to mention that she and Song Hye-chwan didn't have a substantial relationship. Jang Won-ee continued to say that reason that she had told Jo Seon countless times. Song Hye-chwan is my savior. I helped him give birth to a child just to return the favor, nothing else. You tell me his address, I'll go and explain. Lin Chwan laughed coldly in his heart as he listened to her defense and pooh-poohed. Wanna know Zae Yuan's address? Dream on. I'm not going to let you bother him. Zhe Yuan is also your savior. Why don't you see you repaying him for his kindness? Jiang Wanyi, however, froze out. What did it mean that Zhou Ziyuan was also her savior? When had he saved herself? Why did she have no impression at all? Speak clearly, when did he save me? Lin Chuan didn't expect her to come to such a big event and forget about it. In his heart, he was even more unworthy of his good brother, and spurned the woman in front of him even more. You can really be expensive and forgetful, 6 years ago on New Year's Day that night such an important thing can be forgotten. It's not even if you didn't have a word of thanks in the beginning. But now you're still doing this to my brother. The more Lin Chuan said, the more indignation in his heart. Will be 20 years. Zhou Ziyuan in the back of Jiang Wanyi's silent payment has been 6 years ago. That dangerous night a brain told out, and even gave her to see the cell phone left in the year Zhou Ziyuan hospitalized photos. Jiang Wanyi did not know how she left Lin Chuan's house. Her entire body is in a state of confusion. She felt as if her world collapsed into a darkness, no longer shine into a ray of light.